So in this video, me and my buddy Cruz, we're going to show you how to fade between scenes where the player can walk up to an area that is maybe an entrance to a building or a cave, and it loads them into a different scene, just like so. Welcome back, it's me again, Leet from the online code coaching, and this time I'm joined with
Cruz from Activity Time with Cruz.
Cruz from Activity Time with Cruz. I'll leave a link to his channel in the description. Cruz here is one of my pair students. He is very Cruz amazing. I had something in my head, it sounded better in my head, but it didn't come out right. He enters the house, it slightly just fades to the dark, and then it fades out back into the light once he's inside the house. That's what we're going to be doing. We also need to do the camera follow, and I did say that this video was going to be the camera follow. Well, it looks like I lied, because we're going to do that next video. This one we're actually just going to do I am a liar. this one we're just gonna do the fade in and out, and then we'll do the camera follow next time. Camera follow, super easy, so we're not too worried about that. I do have this workshop event with only 14 slots remaining, and it's just gonna be a free class. Go ahead and RSVP. Just let me know that you're going, so that at the time of the event, you will get a link to the Zoom meeting. And what we're going to do here is I'm going to build a game from scratch, and you get to watch and ask all kinds of questions. It's fun. It's free. You can't put a price in free. So definitely just come out just to see how games are made. That's it. And it will be an education experience, and I have a bunch of kids, and you get to socialize and talk and make friends. But on with the video. Last time with Dylan, we made the animation for him walking around. So now we're going to make him transition between scenes. And so a quick little setup here that I'm going to do is just set up a little area. So we're going to put a trigger, you're right, we're going to put a trigger right here that will trigger him entering the other scene. So I'll just create a cube for this.
Yes. So there's going to be a trigger, and then we're going to code it so that when you pass the trigger, it's going to transport you into a new scene.
Cruz knows his stuff, folks. Cruz knows his stuff. What can I say? He is cruising. Alright, so there's my trigger. We'll disable the rendering, and we'll just set it to is trigger. And that will be there. Let's just go ahead and call it scene trigger. Let's call it house trigger, because we're going to replicate this trigger and be able to kind of like use it over and over for every houses that or caves that he would be able to go into. But for right now, we're simplifying things. You just want things to work before you make them look good. Let's create the fade in effect real quick. We're going to go ahead and create a UI image. And you can see the image just kind of like sits in the corner there. But what I can do with the image is, let me go to 2D view and zoom out and see how really small or really big the overlay really is. This white rectangle represents your screen. And then this image here is a small little image in that corner. So if you see the game view,
and it also marks the center of the image.
Yes, also marks the center. So what I want to do is kind of like stretch this image to fit perfectly on the screen. So what I go is here, and if you hold, I think Shift, or is it Alt? Shift. If you hold Shift and select, I believe this one here, should be this one, or is it Alt and no, Alt on this one. Hold the
Yes.
Alt key, and then this one automatically stretches it out to fit the screen perfectly. And so there it is. We also want to change the color to a black, like so.
Black.
And then what we're gonna do with the effect is, let me go to the game view so you can actually see it happen. What we're gonna do
Should
with the
we make
effect
it
is simply
gray?
turn down the alpha. The alpha is the transparency of it. So simply by turning the alpha down, we load, right? We fade in and we fade out, just like so. So let's go ahead and hit create on
We
this.
can do it because we're pro coders.
Yeah, we'll go ahead and hit create on this. And we go to our animation folder that we just created. And I'm going to call this fade out. So Cruz, what do we consider fade out? When it's going from black to white or from white to black? What is the fade out?
The fade out is when it goes from black to white.
Fade out. Well, when we're leaving this scene, it needs to go dark. So, and then the fade in, we're fading. Oh no, we're fading out the scene. So technically, this, in a sense, this is fading in to fade out the scene. So it's turning black because we're fading out the scene, and then when we're fading in the scene, we want this to turn white. So it's a little bit reverse, but
Yeah, it's a little bit reverse.
we're gonna make it work. So on the, where is it? The scene fader. We have the scene fader here selected, and what I'm gonna do first is go to the image and just make the image alpha all the way 0. And then when I hit record on this, go forward a little bit and go back and make the
And
alpha
then we drag it to black.
full black. And so if we hit play to kind of like test it here, that is the result. If we ever
It's a
want
little
to,
bit too fast.
if we ever, I kind of need to be a little fast. If we ever wanted to like be, it's kind of like zoop, like so. If we ever wanted to make it faster, that's okay. But this isn't bad. This isn't too bad.
No, it isn't bad enough.
All right.
It'll.
So we're gonna hit this right here again and say new clip, and then this we'll call this our
Fade
fade in,
in.
which is just gonna be the opposite
From
here.
black to white.
So we're gonna go ahead and make it black first. Hit record, scroll forward a little bit, and go again and make it white. And now we have our fade in. All right. I think we are ready to go. I'm gonna make this white by default, and let's go look at the little like animator that was created for us. Okay. So on the entry, it wants to fade in by default. It wants to kind of wants to fade out. I'm gonna actually have it fade in by default. And what I can actually do is then actually just make this dark. And you can see here, as soon as the game starts, it'll fade in. But it's gonna keep doing it.
Yeah,
So let's go ahead and just uncheck the loop for all of these. We never want them to loop. And let's hit play one more time just for testing. So that it fade in there, but it is kind of fast.
Yeah.
Just
that's what I
as
said.
you mentioned, it is kind of fast. Let's go ahead and go back to the animator and make these a lot slower. So the fade in, let's make it fade in about 1/10 per second there. Let's test it. Hit play. That's not bad. Play again. That is actually really nice. All right. So
Yeah.
we'll do both of them at the same speed. So this went to the fade in goes up to 110. We'll do the fade out at the same 110. Let's go ahead and create a script that's going to handle the scene loader. What a name. Um, and we're going to put it on the scene fader that has the animator on it for good reasons, of course. So scene loader will go right here. Now let's crack open scene loader like it's an egg.
Yeah.
How do you... I got the sound effects going. To be able to load from scene into scene, we need the scene management. So Unity dot engine scene management, and I think I'm going to remove these functions. We're not using them. We'll need a public variable or public float. Let's call this fade scene, and in here we need to be able to access the animator. So let's also create a public animator and just call it animator. Why not? Animator. And then in the fade scene, in the fade scene we simply say animator dot set. We'll do a trigger. We haven't done the triggers before, so we'll do a trigger, set trigger, and then we just got to give it the trigger name. We just call it fade. So what the trigger is going to do is it's going to go from one end to the next end, and only when it triggers again it goes back the other way. So basically this is what's going to happen. In this animator, we'll create a transition from this to this, transition back to that. So we have this to transition. This transition here, there's no exit time, and the delay between it, fixed duration, no. Delay just happens immediately. Zero all that out. Same thing for this one. This, zero, that, no exit time.
Yes.
So it happens immediately. Go to that one, go to that one. But the transition between them, we'll have go to parameters and create a trigger, and we just call it fade because the name has to match, just like in the code, fade. And so this trigger will just say to go from this one to that one, fade, and back to this one, fade. So the way this will work, I'll show you a quick test. And we go to the animator here and just pull it apart. And this is a trigger, so as soon as I hit this, boom, triggers the black. Hit it again, triggers the white. So it's just a trigger, and each time you call it, it goes on or goes off. Perfect. So, and again, I said this video might be a little long. All we gotta do now is call this function from any time we want to load the scene. And all we'll do next is actually we'll create another function here that will load the scene after the trigger is finished playing.
Yes.
So we'll also make this public, and we'll call it load scene. And in here we'll give it a maybe an index, a scene name. So give it a string, and we'll just call it underscore scene. So that's the scene that we want to load. And then we simply use the scene manager dot load scene, and in here it just simply puts the scene name that we should be loading when this function is called. think something isn't right. I tell you what, we'll do a private string. So we just say string, and we'll call this underscore scene. And when we call this fade, we can send a string of what scene should be set. And then in here, we simply say underscore scene equals X. The thing is that the animation is going to call this function, and technically we're not going to sure which scene. I'm thinking ahead, because all these triggers, we're going to just duplicate it, replicate it, and have it load any scene we want it to load. And so the triggers are simply just going to call the fade, and when the fade is finished, it's just going to call the function to load the scene. So when we call the fade, we will at least be able to lock in the name of the scene that should be loaded when it's finished. This part will happen almost like hard-coded. That's why I couldn't put the name of the scene in here. It will kind of make sense in a minute. In the animation, to be honest, there is a animation event. So when this here is done fading right here, we can add an animation, an event here, and the event will be able to pick up any function that is public and also on the object with the script. And this object is here. Let me not forget to connect this. This
so
object
now
is
you
there.
can connect the animator so it knows which animator it is.
So now we just tell it what function to load, which we called it's not any of these. Load scene, this one right here. We'll set up the rest of it later as we go on. I think this is fine the way it is. Now into the scene we go, back into the 3D view. Let's work on that trigger we made. House trigger. For testing, we'll create a small little test script. We'll just say test. And on our trigger, we'll go ahead and put our test script. And we're gonna crack it open. Let's get this. Oh no, we don't need that. Test script, we don't need none of this. And we'll say on trigger, enter. If, autocomplete. If our other trigger game object is tagged with player, then we want to signal this here to load certain scene. So all we got to do is create a public string, and we'll just call it scene to load. And we just gotta maybe we can just find it. Why not? Game object dot find, and the exact name is scene fader. Once we find it, we simply get the component, which is scene loader, and we tell it to simply do the function fade scene, which requires a string, and the string is scene to load. Boom. And we drop the mic and we're done. So this will be placed on our house trigger, which it is. And then let's go ahead and look at our scenes. And I think we're done. If all was done right, we go over here to the build settings, if I can find it. There we go. And we put our scenes in. That's the first one. This is the second one. Test 2 is the name. So I'm going to tell this thing, hey, when I touch it, I want you to load the test 2 scene. As simple as that. And in the, let's save this and go to the test 2. We need this here. We'll just create a prefab out of it. Like so. That way it will kind of fade as well. In the test 2 scene, we'll go ahead and put this prefab in there just so that it will do this thing here where it kind of like when you load in, it loads in like so. Okay, that's going to be a test 2. And that's all we want to happen there. So let's go back to our scene here. Hit play, and it's time, moment of truth, to test. So when we walk over here, it triggers nothing. Why? Because our player is probably not tagged player, as I told it to check.
Yes.
Now when we walk over here, we fade out, and then we fade in here into our new scene. So after you have everything set up, you should be able to now walk over to your area and loads him right in like so. Don't forget that on this area, if you wanted to load him back into the other spot, you will have to do some more code structures where you might have to like set this like start area so that when you go back into the other scene like so, he doesn't start over here, but he would start over there. So those are simple stuff to do. Just subscribe because we'll eventually get to that as well. And then also what I didn't show on camera is that this guy, when you're in this scene, don't forget to tag him as well as player. But there's going to be a system for that as well, so that you don't have just different scenes with different players in there. You kind of want to have like that one player that you're loading into the scene. So that's always the best way to do it. But yeah, that's it, guys. Thank you for checking out this video, and we're gonna catch you in the next one.